to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Goins here with a very special guest. The return of the king, co-founder Jake Lawler himself is back in the co-pilot seat for today's episode. Johnny is away, so we brought back the big guns for an Uncharted review, the Stranger Things 4 news discussion, The Sky is Everywhere, talking about that movie as well. Jake, what an episode to have you back for. I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, wow, what a welcome. What a welcome back. That was great.
We have to go all out when the co-founder of Inside the Film Room comes back on the podcast.
It is an honor and a privilege every time.
Well, that's going to be our episode today. Beyond just me hyping up Jake, we're talking about Uncharted, the latest big screen adventure. Tom Holland bringing the video games to the big screen. I'm going to give a little mini review of The Sky is Everywhere, which is on Apple TV Plus. It's an A24 movie, not quite as big and adventurous as Uncharted. And then, as always, we've got some news to discuss. Like I said, Stranger Things 4. We've got some trailers to dive into. So it should be a fun little episode here. But before any of that, as always, we've got to plug the newsletter, The Rewind. Be sure to subscribe on our website, on our social media profiles, wherever you follow us. And we will be sending you a newsletter once a week, maybe once every other week. No promises there, but we package up everything that we make and deliver it directly to you for your entertainment. So you can do that, and it automatically gets you qualified for a bunch of different raffles that we do. We just gave away a King Richard Blu-ray copy. We've got a lot more in the pipeline coming up, so don't miss out on that. Subscribe to The Rewind. But before we dive into the episode, Jake, what's been going on? Tell the people how you're living lavish in LA, what the latest news is with you, what you've been watching, what have you been enjoying recently, my friend?
Well, I can say that I wish I was living lavish in LA. Living nice, I think, is probably the standard that I would hope to achieve. But no, it's been good. I have some career news that I just got that I'll be able to share soon. That was pretty life-changing, to say the least. So I'm very excited about that. Other than the secrecy of that, I think more openly, I've been watching quite a bit of TV over the past few weeks. I've been recently watching Abbott Elementary, which is just a delight. It is. I would recommend it to everyone. It's like
I've seen it hyped.
Sitcom, I think, has returned. It's quite good. Yeah.
It's been hyped all over social media. I watched the first episode, and I have, like, at any given time, I have like 11 TV shows that I'm watching. So like I watched the first episode and haven't continued with it yet, but that's definitely the plan, is to get into that, because I know everybody's loving it. And now to add you to the list, it must be good.
Yeah, I think we have a shared passion for Yellow Jackets and the After Party, which I'm
Indeed
quite enjoying. All right, I finished the first season of Yellow Jackets, which is great.
I still haven't finished it. I've been slacking.
I finished there. Peacemaker, which is great. Oh, what episode are you on Yellow Jackets?
I watched episode 4. That's been one that's been kind of like a.
Oh wow, you're far behind.
I know. I started it like I think it had already finished by the time I started it because I knew I was like late to the train. But like I said, I was at like max capacity as far as how many shows I was watching. So I had to finish a couple before I got started. So that one's been slower. But like you, finished Peacemaker this week. What a show. I'm caught up on Righteous Gemstones on HBO,
amazing.
Euphoria, everything. Everything on HBO Max is just hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah, no, I think that they can give James Gunn the key to the kingdom over there, and I think that he will do a tremendous job. It did like tremendous numbers, didn't it? I was seeing on Twitter that it was like the number one HBO Max original since they like debuted the streaming service, right?
Yeah, it was like the hours watched or the number of people who watched it. I don't know exactly how they measure it, but it was just nothing but good news from them. And the good news continued as our first piece of news that Peacemaker has been renewed for season 2. So what started off as a side character in the Suicide Squad then developed into a fantastic first season of television that, like, if you had told me while I was watching the Suicide Squad how much I would care for that character, the way that we see him on the big screen, like just a couple of episodes later, I would have been absolutely shocked. But I'm so pleased with what we got there, and I'm excited to now continue on with season 2, because what a finale that was to wrap up one story, but then there's obviously plenty of new directions that they can go with such a great cast.
People talk about NYU Tisch, they talk about USC, they talk about Yale, they talk about the great drama programs, but I think that they're forgetting one drama program, and that's the action program that comes from WWE, because I cannot believe how good these wrestlers turned actors are. I mean, it's like every time a major wrestler becomes a major star, they're just going to do thing, and then you watch them evolve. I mean, we saw it, I think, when Batista had his little 5-minute thing in Blade Runner 2049. I was shocked, but I mean, just watching John Cena go from who he was in the WWE, and then to watch him be, like you said, like Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad film, and then to watch this, I'm just like, Jesus. I mean, the WWE acting skill is competing with the best in the world.
And I have to give shouts to my guy Dwayne Johnson as well. Love The Rock on this podcast,
of course,
and the Fast and the Furious and everything that he touches. So that's another one that I can get away with some Rock praise when Johnny's not on the podcast. So I have to get it while I can, because he will absolutely slander Dwayne The Rock Johnson whenever he is here. But Cena, Batista, The Rock, and while we were talking Cena, you can't forget that he is the wonderful co-host of the show Wipeout. Like, what a phenomenal program as well. So just my guy's just living his best life post WWE. What else has been occupying you? Anything else on you're diving into all sorts of like old classic films and expanding your knowledge base, trying to catch up with Josh at this point?
Actually, Matt Reeves is talking quite extensively about a film that inspired the Batman that's coming out. And I'd seen him mention it in a few interviews, and I thought it was probably of interest to check out. And it was pretty excellent. It's a very horny movie. So if this is his main inspiration, then I think that all of the Pence and Kravitz chemistry is probably going to be well worth it. But it's also very sad, and it's very twisted, and Jane Fonda's performance is particularly haunting. But I mean, hey, you could have chosen. I don't think you could have chosen better inspiration, because I was really blown away by how well crafted and well executed it was from a perspective. I'm curious to see what he means. My assumption would probably be the relationship between Donald Sutherland's character and Jane Fonda's character is somewhat analogous to Batman and Catwoman in this film, and I think that there's probably some similarity there just from what I've read and kind of what we've seen so far. But I'd be interested. I guess also probably there's like a sociopath in Clute that seems to be. I would assume that the Riddler's, I think, makeup maybe is partially inspired by how he's built as well.
Well, speaking of Matt Reeves, I know we're obviously a week and a half away, 2 weeks from the Batman at this point, but on the website right now, Johnny Sobchak has written up a kind of Matt Reeves retrospective, how did we get here piece, looking back at his career. So I would highly recommend that. It's on the website to check out, but it goes from, his earliest film, like student films at USC, to the Cloverfield, to the Planet of the Apes movies, and kind of like lays the progression of how he went from student to, as Johnny refers to him as, the master. So that's kind of if you want to just read it, that's fine. If you want to read it and check out some of the films that he talks about to get your feet wet, whether you're rewatching Batman movies ahead of the release, or if you want to rewatch Matt Reeves movies, whichever way, I don't think you can go wrong as we build up to what's quite possibly our most hyped movie of the year, with the Batman on March 4th. But that's a great thing to have on the website right now, so go and check it out. But for me, beyond Peacemaker, beyond television, all of that, I obviously checked out Uncharted, which Jake and I are going to dive into here in a minute. But I also checked out The Sky is Everywhere, streaming on Apple TV Plus. It's a, sort of a teen coming of age romance drama that is from Apple TV and from A24. Quick plot synopsis here. Again, this is the mini review, so we'll get to Uncharted in a minute. We'll get to the news, but I just had to bring this up as one of the recent releases here. But tucked among the magical redwoods, emphasis on magical, the redwood trees of Northern California, and surrounded by her grandmother's gargantuan roses, 17-year-old Lenny Walker, a radiant musical prodigy, struggles with overwhelming grief following the sudden loss of her older sister, Bailey. When Joe Fontaine, the charismatic new guy at school, enters Lenny's life, she's drawn to him. But Lenny's complicated relationship with her sister's devastated boyfriend, Toby, starts to affect Lenny and Joe's budding love. Through her vivid imagination and honest, conflicted heart, Lenny navigates first love and first loss to create a song of her own. So this is directed by Josephine Decker, who has done some other smaller sort of like indie films like this. She did Shirley just back in 2020 with Elizabeth Moss. But this movie, it had a great trailer, was very, very like attention grabbing for me. I love a good coming of age story, but unfortunately did not live up to the hype as much as I had hoped for. This was sort of, I don't know if it was just like the overall like feel of it, because as I was trying to explain to Jake before we got started here, it's very like surrealist almost, because of that vivid imagination and the magical redwoods that it references. Like it almost has like, it's very like artsy and has this like school play sort of look to it. So like there are like almost like cardboard cutouts of animated trees and like birds flying around on ropes, and it's very extreme. It's not like a traditional like straightforward just movie where like everything is happening in reality. So that kind of, I don't know, I was open to it at first, but then the more it went on, it wasn't working for me, unfortunately. And then that kind of just like, because it is so much of this movie, so heavy, it just kind of didn't really, it turned me off the further we got into the movie, unfortunately. So didn't really do it for me. I will say Jason Segel, he's pretty funny in his parts. That's my king, Marshall from How I Met Your Mother. I'll always respect him. We also had, I don't think I'd ever seen her in anything else before, but Cherry Jones is the grandmother, and I'm trying to remember her character's name. She's in Succession. She's the head of what's the family, Jake? The Pierce family that they try to make a deal with. Yeah. So she was in this as well. But I mean, it's got a 68% audience score and critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. So I am seemingly in the minority here. So I would recommend, if you have Apple TV Plus, it's still worth checking out. I mean, I feel like A24 movies, you either love them or it depends on, but like with an A24 movie, I usually find myself either loving it or despising it. Like some of the Lighthouse, we've had that discussion before. Not for me. This one kind of falls somewhere in the middle. So it stood out for me in that sense. But The Sky is Everywhere on Apple TV Plus. I think it also has a limited theatrical release, so it may already be gone at this point because it came out not this week, but last week. But yeah, that's my mini review here. Jake, any plans to check it out, or is it on your radar, not on your radar? What's the, you obviously haven't seen it, so you can't weigh in on that, but have you seen the trailer? Are you interested?
Well, if it's anything like The Lighthouse, then I might have to consider.
It is nothing like The Lighthouse. I did not mean to sway you there.
Yeah. Based on everything you said, I cannot imagine that it's anything similar to The Lighthouse. Yeah, I mean, I saw the trailer for it. It looks interesting. I'm gonna check it out at some point.
Well, let's keep on rolling here. Let's get into news. Obviously, we touched on the big news out of HBO, out of DC with Peacemaker season 2. Very excited for that, but we're also very excited for some big Netflix news here, and that is the fact that after a teaser, after 3 years of waiting almost, we finally have confirmation Stranger Things season 4 has a release date, and actually has release dates. We're getting 2 volumes. First one dropping May 27th, a little Memorial Day celebration, and second one dropping July 1st, so a little July 4th celebration. We're going to have a summer of Stranger Things. Jake, I know you and I, going back to season 2, season 3, whenever it was, have been begging Netflix to release Stranger Things on a weekly basis because it would literally break the internet. We've seen what happens with HBO shows coming out weekly, with Mandalorian, Boba Fett, anything like that. It is the discussion. And what bigger show than Stranger Things would be able to do that on like a Game of Thrones level? So I need to know, did you sneak over to the Netflix office? Did you tell them to do this and they finally listened to you, or what? Like, we're not quite there, but almost.
Yeah, I'm still curious. I'm curious, I think, about the thinking behind it. I mean, I think that like time and time again over the past 12 months, really over the past like 12 to 18 shows that have dropped weekly, I think it has proven once again that that is the method in terms of keeping conversation hot, keeping the audience, or growing the audience, I think even more, because if you see a bunch of people tweeting about something or texting about something on a week by week basis, then it's not like a bingeable thing. Then you have to catch up and tune in, and your audience grows.
I mean, that was like the Yellow Jackets effect, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, that was the first season of Euphoria though as well.
Yeah.
Because the first season of Euphoria was like not necessarily a middling thing, but it wasn't as famous.
I didn't watch it until after. Like, I didn't watch it
Exactly.
live because I did get that word of mouth and then catch up to it.
Yeah, and because Euphoria dropped weekly, like I remember watching the first around like the time that the first season of Euphoria, like episode 6 had dropped, and they still had 2 episodes left. I went back and watched episodes 1 to 6 to catch up. And it just, maybe it's like part of their mandate. Maybe it's part of like, they believe that their consumer base believes that maybe they have an obligation to things that come out on a bingeable basis. But what better, and maybe this is, like you said, maybe this is the start of them changing, but what better way to make a splash and do it the way that I think works the best than with your flagship show, the most famous show that has ever debuted on Netflix.
Well, because we've seen it with like, just now, like they're doing it with Ozark. I don't watch, but like I know that's obviously a huge show, and they did volumes, and we've seen it with shows as dumb as, you know, Too Hot to Handle coming out in 2 volumes, but like they're finally doing it with like the show. And like we're talking about other shows that follow this method, or that follow the weekly method, like Peacemaker, for example. Like like it was a big show, but they dropped 3 episodes on the premiere, but it wasn't until, you know, episode 5, episode 6, those like when it was going weekly and you were waiting versus like that mini binge to start, that it really like took off and was like more of like a centerpiece in the Twitter discussion and the popular culture. So I feel like just within that one show, there's like a case study versus of like the binge versus the week to week, that shows that week to week is like the way to dominate discussion.
Yeah. I'm assuming they're continuing on this path, and I mean, obviously, it's just Stranger Things. Everyone on Earth is going to watch it, but maybe this marks the beginning of a change to where Netflix will start adopting the weekly practice, and I think that at least their observable metrics might be better for it.
Yeah. So we've got, like I said, season 4, volume 1, May 27th, volume 2, July 1st. This news came accompanied with a couple different items. We had 4 location posters showing different members of the crew in different places. We had, it seems like there's like no mystery whatsoever. Like season 3 was left off with like Hopper's fate, if you can remember all the way back to summer of 2019. But it was like, is he alive? Is he not? Like, is he in Russia? But so we got a Russia poster that had Joyce and Hopper and Larry. What was it? I can't even, it's been so long at this point. The bald, like, conspiracy theory guy. But those 3 in Russia. We had 11 solo in the lab. We had one for Creel House, which is new. That was in that first teaser, which seemed to be like a throwback to like the 50s almost. And then it was like, now the crew is going in the 80s and it's like a haunted house almost. And then the Byers family in California, because they moved away. But there was also a letter from the Duffer brothers that gave us quite a bit of information, not about the show, but about the plan. And we're getting this in 2 volumes, and they said that this is almost double the amount of content, the length of, I don't know about in episode numbers, but in length of episodes, total runtime, almost double what we got in season 3, which was a massive season in and of itself, because that finale was like an hour and a half, basically. I remember when we watched it, we were saying that it was like the best movie we had seen of the year at that point. But super long season, and also the news that this is the second to last season. They set out with this story in mind, and it will end with season 5. So maybe by the time that season rolls around, it'll be weekly episodes. Who knows? But a lot to be excited about in the Stranger Things universe. And beyond season 4, beyond season 5, they also alluded in that letter saying that there are, quote, many more exciting stories to be told in that universe. So we got the tease of, that backdoor pilot with 11 in Pittsburgh way back in season 2. But who knows, maybe there's going to be some continuation with these characters, maybe something else with the other numbers or what have you. But it seems like Netflix is far from done with Stranger Things.
I'm very surprised in a good way that this isn't the last season. I mean, all those kids are mega stars at this point.
Right.
I would have thought that this would have been the sending off point, especially with the way that they're talking about the length, and they're talking about and how long the production has been.
Right. As I was reading that letter,
would have been that. Yeah.
I was reading that letter, and I was like waiting to get to like the part where it's like, and like, we are proud that this is going to be our finale or something like that. But then they hit us with number 5. But I feel like it's partially because, it wasn't always supposed to be a 3-year gap from season 3 to season 4. And so they probably, I'm sure they had plenty of time to rewrite the story if they needed to, yeah. But like they wasn't the plan initially to go with 4. So I'm glad to see that they're like seeing it through and not Game of Thronesing it and like rushing it to wrap it up in 6 episodes or anything like that. But I like you said, those kids, not only are they mega stars, but they're also like 35 at this point. So it will be interesting to see them this season and then beyond. Maybe we'll have to do like a time jump or something. But I'm excited. It's always, whether you drop it, all at once in volumes weekly, like there's still like just so much hype around Stranger Things. So I'm excited to kind of have that discussion back, no matter how long it is. But it's been a favorite of mine and yours, I believe, like for quite some time. We've had some good discussions about it. So yeah, I'm excited for what's next. But speaking of Netflix, we got a trailer for the Sandman himself, Adam Sandler, back in a somewhat dramatic role, it seems, after Uncut Gems. He pivoted back, as his infamous quote, I'll say, that if he didn't get nominated for an Oscar, he would make the worst movie of all time. And we were blessed with Hubie Halloween, a favorite of mine. and I believe a few other Netflix comedies. But now he is, dipping back his toe back into the Uncut Gems waters with some basketball related content. I don't think there's any jewelry or gambling involved here, but Hustle, not The Hustle. That is Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson, a glorious film. But Hustle, we got the first trailer for it. It's hitting Netflix June 10th. And it is the Sandman and a bunch of NBA players, it seems like. He's a talent scout who has found this diamond in the rough from abroad, and he's trying to get him to come to the NBA. And I'm like, I don't necessarily expect like something fantastic, but I think that this looks pretty solid. I love the dramatic turn of Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems, to get some TikTok talk here. Thoughts on the trailer? Did you check it out? What are you feeling here?
I think it looks really good. I mean, I'm all for Sandler becoming a dramatic actor again. Granted, it's not his first or even his second time. I mean, he's pretty tremendous in Punch Drunk Love as well.
Thank you to Jake Lawler for my Criterion Punch Drunk Love.
Which is a very chaotic movie, but he's quite good in it. And I mean, I think that I wonder, maybe he's at this stage of the career, and also he's been a basketball fan for really, I think, as long as people have known him to be famous. I'm excited. I'd love to see him do more stuff like this. I think he's a very talented actor. I truly believe that very few people have the range that he does, and sort of like his ability to have an extended career for so long and to metamorphose himself in so many different ways is fascinating. And I think that he seems like a trademark good guy. Definitely. I don't think that there's anybody that is like anti Adam Sandler. And I think that the trailer looked really interesting. It's cool that he's partnering with LeBron James as he continues to sort of like get into the producing world of things. I'm looking forward to it. I will see anything Adam Sandler.
It's part of like no matter what you like or think about like Adam Sandler movie, like when you say Adam Sandler movie, there's a certain image you have in mind, a Grown Ups, or like a Hubie Halloween, something like a silly dumb comedy that probably has Kevin James in it and like all of his crew. But like, especially after Uncut Gems, after the quote about making the worst movie, like he's so self-aware about it that like he knows, like, respect to him for literally just like having his boys and like going out and making movies with them and like having a good time. And like people love those movies, they're gonna go and watch them, like, but he also seems to have like a solid understanding that like this is just me out here like having fun and like being dumb and silly, and it's not like I know that I'm not like making like Oscar winners or anything like that, but he also knows that he has the ability to act on such a high serious level, whether it is like a PTA movie or a Safdie brothers movie, and still like be an elite star.
Yeah, I mean, remember that after the Uncut Gems performance, Daniel Day-Lewis called him himself and congratulated Adam Sandler and said that it was a tremendous performance. So like, I mean,
if you're getting praise from Daniel Day-Lewis, I don't know if there's anything higher than that to kind of validate your dramatic acting ability.
Yeah, Oscars be damned. I think that he's a ton of fun in whatever he is, and I'm excited for this one for sure.
I hope we just get to see some. It seems like he's a talent scout. He's on the sidelines, but we've all seen the videos of Sandman in the gym running some 5-on-5. So I hope we get to see him in action a little bit here. That would just make this movie even better. But another trailer that we got this week, I had no idea what to expect from this. Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. Like, when they first announced it, I think it was on Disney Plus Day, I guess that's when we got like the first like substantial news for it. But Chip and Dale, I have seen them at Disney dressed up in their costumes. That's like the extent. They had their animated cartoon back in like our childhood, but I cannot say that I was necessarily eager to pick back up with Chip and Dale, with the Chipmunks. But then we found out it was John Mulaney and Andy Samberg, and the Lonely Island crew is making this movie, which is like, what an odd combination of Disney characters and The Lonely Island. But I'm so here for it, and we got this trailer for it, and it seems to be such a fun twist on this. It's not an animated movie, it's not a live, it's like a hybrid, sort of like what Tom and Jerry wanted back in 2021, I guess. How it's like cartoon and meets live action. But like the whole approach to this movie is that like one of them gets like they go from classic cartoon to CGI. He like got the enhancement surgery to go like from cartoon to CGI, and they're basically trying to figure out how to make a comeback as Chip and Dale like put them back in the spotlight. So I was very like, I had no idea what to expect, but I couldn't be more pleased with what I saw from this trailer. I don't know if you felt the same way, Jake, but you know, for me, I'm always going to ride for something John Mulaney. And if you throw in Andy Samberg and Lonely Island, I'm even more excited for it.
Yeah, no, I was really surprised, and I like the meta-ness of it. I mean, it's funny that it kind of feels like very much a Who Framed Roger Rabbit film, and they said that they were dancing with Roger Rabbit as like at the 20-second mark of the trailer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think that this crew can do any wrong. I mean, I was like a huge fan of Pop Star when it came out.
Pop Star is a classic,
and I know that is stark difference between that and this, but I think that like having that same creative team involved will do anything. And then you know we saw Andy Samberg have a really great dramatic turn in Palm Springs. Well, like a comedic dramatic turn, but I thought he did really well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of craziness they can cook up.
Yeah, this suddenly went from you know, not even on my radar to being like I wouldn't say a top contender, but definitely something that I'm like anticipating and excited to check out. And it's not even that far away, May 20th on Disney Plus. So it'll be here before we know it. But one final trailer to discuss before we move on to our review, and that's something that's even sooner, going up against the Batman. So I don't know what the likelihood of viewers there versus Batman, but it's called Fresh. It's streaming on Hulu, so maybe a different demographic there. But an interesting little murder. I wouldn't quite call it a murder mystery, but like a thriller, psychological. Like, I'll just give you a brief rundown here. Fresh follows Noah, who meets the alluring Steve at a grocery store, and given her frustration with dating apps, takes a chance and gives him her number. After their first date, Noah is smitten and accepts Steve's invitation to a romantic getaway, only to find that her new paramour has been hiding some unusual appetites. And if that doesn't give it away enough, the poster for this is like a meat package that you would get at the grocery store, and it's a human hand in there versus like some ground beef or something. So Sebastian Stan, Daisy Edgar Jones, who is phenomenal in Normal People a couple years ago and is going to be in Where the Crawdads Sing this summer as well. But again, this was one that I was not necessarily like familiar with or anticipating or anything, but if you put those two people in it and it has like some sort of twisty psychological aspect to it with a little mystery, like I'm suddenly very interested. It's 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I don't know if this I guess it may have had like a festival premiere at some point and then was acquired by Hulu. But 85 reviews out there already and 85% certified fresh. So this is another one that's kind of quickly shot up my list, especially being just 2 weeks away.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten a chance to check the trailer out, but I think from everything that you were talking about, it sounds really good. I've been, my girlfriend and I have been recently diving deep into the Pam and Tommy universe, and Sebastian.
I have not checked it out yet, but
Sebastian Stan has been excellent in it. So I think that I will definitely be tuning in to see what he does next, and it seems like his Hulu overall deal, because everything that he keeps getting in gets pushed on there.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, it sounds really cool. So
I'm
excited to see more about it.
We didn't mention this off the top. I know for a Christmas present, you got tickets to go to Sundance Film Festival, and then they kind of I know you ended up still going to Utah, but like the festival went remote, right? Or did you get to do anything in person out there? Because I just looked it up, and this premiered at Sundance of this year. So I maybe you missed out on the chance to check this one out, but you were pretty busy with some other movies that you were getting to check out.
Yeah, no, I didn't get a chance to check this one out. I think the crown jewel, in my opinion, of the Sundance Film Festival is After Yang, which is also coming out in March. It's actually coming out the same week, I think, as the Batman. I think it's coming out March 4th, which maybe not the best strategy, but it is beautiful, and I think anyone that is a fan of anyone that has seen Kogo Nada's first film, Columbus, will be happy to see this. And Colin Farrell pulling double duty on March 4th with his lead role in After Yang and his crazy turn of the Penguin. But I think that I would recommend After Yang to any and all that would be interested in a deeply affecting, slow, emotional drama of sci-fi proportions.
We're gonna have a busy viewing schedule on March 4th, it seems, between the Batman, Fresh, and After Yang. So
yeah, it's gonna be a fun weekend.
Get your popcorn ready.
I will definitely be going back to see After Yang. So I would encourage anyone to go see it when they can, in between the numerous Batman showings that I'm sure that will.
Exactly. Now I'm even more excited that I have the March 1st early fan event for Batman, so it'll free me up for either repeat viewings, Fresh or After Yang. But let's get into it. We mentioned to get your popcorn ready, and this is the definition of a popcorn movie. Uncharted, the long-awaited adaptation of some of the best video games of our time, of our childhood. Jake and I, PlayStation boys through and through. Throwing it back to Uncharted, Drake's Fortune on PlayStation 3. The series was so good, and for the longest time, I say we collectively as like people who played those games were like, this is such a cinematic game. It needs to be turned into a movie. Give us Nathan Fillion. They even made like the fan sequence with him to adapt it into a YouTube short. But now it is here, starring Tom Holland as a younger Nathan Drake. It's a prequel to anything that we ever saw in the games. Mark Wahlberg is playing Sully. We've got Tati Gabriel, who you may know from season 3 of You. We've got Sophia Ali and Antonio Banderas as a conniving villain here. Tough critic score here, which I'm heartbroken by. 39% critic
too harsh.
score.
It's too harsh.
It is. Let's go have some fun at the movie
and it's
theater.
also not true. Like it is not a sub 40% movie.
Right. Like when you look at some of the other movies that have a 39 stamped on them, like some of them deserve it, but this does not. I'm going to bat for Uncharted here. 39% critic score, 89% audience score. At least somebody has some sense here.
Some taste.
Well, I may not be as high on this as the audience at 89%, because that's a damn near perfect movie. I am very high on this compared to the critics. I have a 65 out of 100. This is a solid 3 stars, borderline 3.5 for me. But I went into this movie expecting not a ton, honestly. This was one that like had been in the works for a while, and like Tom Holland doesn't have a great track record outside of, with the exception of The Impossible, which was like his first movie when he was like 8 or whatever. That was a fantastic movie. Love the Spider-Man movies, love his take on Peter Parker. But some of the stuff that he's been in, The Devil All the Time, Cherry, unfortunately this apparently at 39%, but some of them have not been as successful as his turn as Spider-Man. So, and just video game movies as a whole, not necessarily a great track record for making the jump to the big screen. So I was like, if I can go into this movie and have a good time, like eat my popcorn, be entertained, see some cool stunts, and like feel like I'm having fun with something that does the video game justice, then this is an absolute win in my book. And that's what this movie did for me. We'll get into it more in a second, but let's give the plot synopsis for anyone out there listening who has not seen it yet. You know what? You know what I'm going to do. Jake, you're here. Do you want to give us the honors of reading the plot synopsis?
How about you do that, and then I can give you a Antonio Banderas impersonation.
Okay.
Whatever he was doing in the movie.
Okay. Street smart thief Nathan Drake, played by Tom Holland, is recruited by seasoned treasure hunter Victor Sully Sullivan, played by Mark Wahlberg, to recover a fortune lost by Ferdinand Magellan 500 years ago. What starts as a heist job for the duo becomes a globe-trotting white-knuckle race to reach the prize before the ruthless Moncada, Antonio Banderas, who believes he and his family are the rightful heirs. If Nate and Sully can decipher the clues and solve one of the world's oldest mysteries, they stand to find $5 billion in treasure and perhaps even Nate's long-lost brother, but only if they can learn to work together. So that's the rundown for you all. And you may be picking up on some notes here through that synopsis, but there's a lot going on here, and I want to relate this to something that Jake and I have a passion for, and that is two movies. If you reflect on the podcast history here, we've done a handful of rewatchables during our time on this podcast. Two of our favorite episodes. One was a rewatchables for National Treasure, and another was a rewatchables for Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. What happens when you take those two movies and just smash them together? I'll tell you what happens. It's Uncharted, because this movie has the same, globe-trotting trapdoors, silly clues, treasure hunting, find the map, like all of the stuff from National Treasure, minus there's still history to it. It's not American history, but like the sailing around the world, the famous explorers, all of that. And then you take the swashbuckling swagger of a Pirates of the Caribbean, and not to mention like two big ass pirate ships at the end. Like it perfectly encapsulated like the fun of it's not nearly as good as either of those two movies, because those are, Jake and I have those as like borderline masterpieces, but it was the closest thing in a long time that I've felt to like either of those. I don't know if it was the same for you, but it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. And I think similar to you, like, I miss the adventure genre. I think that when done well, they're incredibly entertaining. And I think that this was a lot of fun. I think that the National Treasure and Pirates of the Caribbean smashing together is perfect mix of what it was, because it was smashed together, but I think in a way that was really interesting and entertaining. And yeah, I think that since you talked a little bit about it, but like Uncharted is probably my favorite game series of all time.
Yeah, let's I wanted to touch on that too, like the history with the games. Like we both grew up playing PlayStation. I only played the first three. I didn't get around to the fourth one. I was kind of like out of my gaming by then. Yeah. But so like Uncharted 2 is probably like my favorite game of all time, because like I think I've said this before on the podcast that like as a child I was not allowed to have like Call of Duty or shooting games, but like I could get by with Uncharted because it was like an adventure game
that involved a lot of shooting.
Exactly, but you're also Uncharted climbing. Yeah. So like when I got Uncharted 2,
open, he's bleeding out of his stomach in the first frame of the game.
When I got Uncharted 2 and it had like online multiplayer, I was like, finally, I can just like get on and shoot people. But what was it like? What was your experience with the games? Like as a series, a franchise, like I'd say not second to, but alongside like the Batman Arkham games, like those were two, like the also like foundational PlayStation games of that era, I would say.
Yeah, I think probably my favorite game series of all time are Uncharted, Mass Effect, and the Arkham series. And it's a shame that you didn't play the the fourth game, because I think the fourth game is the best of the bunch. I think the second is the second best. The fourth game is like where all the stuff in the film, I think, where his brother comes into play. But it, I mean, it's pretty foundational for me as well. I think as a writer and as a creator, I look to Uncharted as sort of like one of the pinnacles of video game storytelling. And I'm not one of those like deep fans that is like a purist in any sense of the word, and I'm not necessarily like tearing down anything that isn't exactly frame for
This
frame
didn't match
what
up with
this
the
is.
lore
Yeah,
from
yeah. Because we have the games and we will always have the games, and whatever adaptation or whatever iteration comes out, whether it be a series or a movie like this one, if it doesn't match up, then it's not a loss, because
I
it's
remember
not
people
taking
were
anything away.
up in arms when the casting news first came out about Mark Wahlberg. Like I think it was strategic and smart to do a prequel here because it is something
Because you
that
can
like
do more movies.
right,
Yeah.
the fans are like familiar with it, but you also don't have to be like step by step following you don't have to like please the fans by doing it exactly as we see it in the game. And so like to have Tom Holland, like people love Tom Holland, but there was still some criticism like this guy isn't old enough to be Nathan Drake. Okay, we're doing a prequel. And like people were upset that Mark Wahlberg was like playing Sully because he wasn't like the age gap wasn't enough. He didn't have the mustache, or like the people were a little bit up in arms. But like you said, like I'm not one of those who's like, oh, this isn't beat for beat like the video game. So I was perfectly fine with the liberties that they took there.
And I think they capture the essence of what makes the game exciting. I mean, I think that what I always think about with the games, I actually appreciated there was like an extensive puzzle sequence within this movie that I was surprised that they did it for so long, which I thought was actually really engaging. And obviously, I think like puzzles are a core tenet of what makes the Uncharted games, and also the the suspension of belief that you need to have at all times when it comes to playing these games. I know they paid homage a little bit to a sequence in the third game when Nathan's jumping on the airplane. But also like, the ingenuity of having the pirates crash into each other, the pirate ships crash into each other,
Right.
Was really exciting. And it was a fun game. Like it was one of
that's
those,
the thing.
it was a fun movie. So
Like I remember like when we first saw the trailer, I guess, and like Johnny has played these games as well and like is an Uncharted fan, but he had some criticism of like Tom Holland jumping back into the plane when he's like climbing up the crates, like dangling out in midair. And I'm like, you played the games, right? Like that is straight from the game, my guy. Like this is not, if you're going into an Uncharted movie and like criticizing stuff like that, like you're not gonna like it. But like as a fan of the game, this is one of the bullets I wanted us to hit on. But like, did this feel true to the source material? And I would say it definitely did, because of
so too.
That suspension of belief that you said, the cold open here, which is something that the games have done. Like we get that plane sequence starts this movie and then it goes back and then it like comes back in the middle. It does a little Mission Impossible 3 on you. Yeah. But like the physics, the lack of physics, climbing through the air, like pirate ships flying, like the climbing and stunts felt very authentic to the game because of the way that it's like he's climbing up the side of a mountain and there's happens to be like a ledge that's perfectly like, oh, he pulls himself up. Like the way that they shot it and staged everything made it feel like it was part of the game. I was almost expecting at some point, like when someone was shooting, that it would do almost like an over the shoulder type look to it, just as like a little Easter egg almost to the games. But I think personally it felt very true to like the fun, the extremeness of those games that make it like so adventurous and successful. And that like, again, that's what I was hoping to get coming into this movie. I wasn't like, let's take the premise of Uncharted and put it in a very realistic setting. And because then it's not Uncharted, then it's just Mission Impossible or James Bond or some other like pre-existing spy action franchise.
Yeah, and that, I think if we jump ahead a little bit to talk about sort of the characterization of Nate and Sully, in my opinion, they didn't feel like the characters from the game, but not in a bad way. Like I wasn't turned off by it. Obviously, I think because it was a prequel, Sully is much meaner and much greedier and much
Right.
more vicious, I think, in this. And I think Nate is much less confident than he is in the, like
And
when we meet him.
also more like innocent, I would say. Like
Yeah,
he's like
yeah,
more
100%.
naive.
Yeah. But like I didn't think that that was a bad thing at all. I thought it was cool to sort of like have their arc play out like that, especially it being a prequel. And Tom Holland is like an unbelievable athlete. I mean, like
That's another
like
thing.
he's got to be one of the most physically gifted actors in Hollywood, because like because other actors in the film, they would do like the classic Hollywood wide shot 3-second cutaway, but every time he's on screen, the camera's on him and you can see him doing all of it. Which was really cool. And he's great. I mean, I think he's a great leading man. He's got a lot of charisma, and he can do everything that's asked of him and more, that seems like. So.
Yeah, it's part of just like the way that like movie stars are now, that like we had it with Kumail when he was cast in Eternals, and it's like, okay, now Kumail is jacked, but like Tom Holland was already jacked as Spider-Man, but like that's like Nathan Drake in the games is not like some bodybuilder free. Like there are multiple shirtless Tom Holland scenes in this, and I told Rebecca, I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna have to, like, by honeymoon, like I'm gonna look like Tom Holland. That's the goal now at this point in my life. but like I feel like Nate in the games is like constantly like getting beat up and like kind of like a rough and tumble, like he's not this pristine ninja athlete or anything, like he's very acrobatic and able to climb, but it's always like getting up after a fall with like a, oh, okay, like shake it off kind of thing, versus like the shirtless Tom Holland doing pull-ups with his 8-pack and like gigantic muscles. So like I know they can't be like, hey Spider-Man, like can you like get a little flabby for this role or what, but I was fine with that, because again, this is a younger version of him. Maybe he hasn't like cracked open as many brewskis at this point in his life, but same thing for Mark Wahlberg's Sully. I was exactly with you. I was like, this guy's a little too mean, a little too cutthroat. But again, this is their first time ever working together. Like they hadn't really proven themselves as friends or like assets and partners to each other. So like by the end of, did you stay and see the post-credits scenes? Because there
were two, or was there just
was
one?
like
I only
there
saw
was
the
like an
first
initial one, I think, and then like a mid credits one.
Yeah, I only saw the one with Rudy Pankow.
Yeah. So at the end, speaking of, shout out to JJ from Outer Banks, popping up here as Nathan Drake's long lost brother. So that happens, and there's him like somehow still alive sending postcards, and then there's like a mid credits in which it seems like it's setting up almost the events of the first game. So Tom Holland or Nathan Drake is like sitting down with what's his name? It's the bad guy in the first game is Roman, I believe. I think that's his name. So this is like an associate of Roman, and so they're like talking about I can't remember what it was, but like some artifact and trying to get it, and then everyone like pulls their guns on Nate, and then Sully comes in to save him, and he's got a mustache, like he's started to grow the mustache, and so it's like setting things into action. But long story short, what I was trying to get to is that like by the end of that, when you see that mid-credit scene, like it's very clear that like, okay, like these guys are who we know them as, like their relationship is how we see it in the games at this point, of like they are like ride or die for each other after going through this initial adventure together. So there hasn't been like an announcement of a sequel or anything like that, but I can only imagine, maybe not with this. It depends on the like box office, I would imagine, but 89%.
Really well. It's doing really well at the box office.
So, and like, who cares about a 39% critic score if you got an 89% audience score and you're doing well at the box office? Like you've got Tom Holland. If you can sneak him away from a Spider-Man movie long enough to make Uncharted 2, like I'm all for that after all of the fun that we just got here.
Yeah, and I have to mention Antonio Banderas, who was like love whispering the entire time. He was like diversified interests, and it's like he never got above like whispering volume on anything. But I anything that he's in, I think is really entertaining.
I will say
it was funny.
He was a revelation here compared to last year's Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, in which he played a character named Aristotle Papadopoulos. So I preferred Boncata to that. But a couple final questions here as we wrap this up. But talking about like these versions of Holland and that Holland and Wahlberg play of these characters, do you think, have you seen, I personally have not seen anything like on Twitter or social media in general, but like what do you think overall of like the fan reception from just a general moviegoer versus like a video game player? Like we both have played the games and have a positive reception here. Have you seen anything or anticipate anything that is, you know, a more negative reaction from someone who has like that history with this versus just a moviegoer?
Yeah, honestly, and I think this is an interesting point to bring up. I haven't seen much conversation about it at all, which I think is interesting because it's made $140 million worldwide already. And I think it's representative of the fact that like Twitter is like less than 1% of the population is
right. It seems like Twitter. It's everyone, but it's not.
Yeah. Like it's like 10% of the American population is on social media. And I think despite sort of the ever growing landscape that it is, I think that it's an interesting note that like despite the lack of quote unquote conversation, it is still performing or outperforming, I think, films that are being talked about a little bit more. So I think it's something to keep note of. But no, I don't think I've seen anybody really talk about it other than like I saw Uncharted, it was fun, and then you just kind of like go about your day, which I think is kind of like what this movie is.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I've seen the same sort of reception. But last question, as someone who is a fan of the games, who has that history, was there anything that you wanted more or less of? You know, that knowing something about this story as you were going into it, was there anything? You know, I kind of laid it out that I wanted to be entertained, to have some connection to the game, like do it justice, to have fun, and like that it checked all those boxes for me. I feel like it was a perfect, you know, talking about National Treasure, talking about Pirates of the Caribbean and the adventure genre as a whole, and like everything that genre being like missing, and like everything now has like, it has to be gritty and it has to have like, you know, this weight and be about grief and trauma and have stakes and all. Like I think this is very much like a throwback to just like the fun adventure of those movies that we reference, that this is just something where you can not even like, it's not even like a turn your brain off movie. Like I'm not saying it in a negative way. Like this was just like pure fun with some action and like still enjoyable characters and stakes mixed in. But was there anything that you wanted more or less of or hope to see in a potential sequel here?
No, I mean, I think that everything that you say, I think I'm sort of echoing as well. I think that hopefully, I think that this emboldens Hollywood to make more of these. I know The Lost City is coming out, which looks like a great.
It's almost like a parody adventure, though.
Yeah. But you know, I would love to. I think that we have talked a lot about how much we like the adventure genre, and I would love to see Elena at some point. But yeah, I mean, I think that it did I think I was pleasantly surprised with the outcome of this, and I'd be happy to see another one for sure.
I'm with you there 100%. Again, 65 out of 100 for me. Solid 3 stars. I would highly recommend anyone who wants to just go have a good time, you know, check this movie out, whether you're a player of the games or just an average moviegoer. Like this definitely worth the watch. And if you're a Tom Holland fan, you will be treated to some classic Tom Holland charm. And I don't think there's anything more you can ask for. But Jake, I don't think there's anything more I can ask for from you. What a treat to have you back on the podcast. It was a blast.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be back as always, and I'm looking forward to the next time when I can reconnect.
For sure. And by then you will be able to share this tremendous news. So for those listening, stay tuned to Jake on social media. Keep up with him and have your eyes peeled for some big time stuff coming from Mr. Lawler. But until then, thank you all for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. All of those are at Inside Film Room. And be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon. No matter where you get a podcast, we are there. And come back next week for another edition of Inside the Film Room. We will see you then.